to do good work, to do quality work, especially in the advertising space, you are always business consulting. You are always, in the sense, optimizing their entire funnel. It's not about just throwing more money into the ad account. It's building out an ecosystem. Stop buying courses. Don't look at anything anymore. I want you to just focus on understanding the basics of consumer psychology and user experience.
Attention marketers and entrepreneurs, this is Valuetising, the place where we talk about scaling brands worth promoting. If you're a mission-driven entrepreneur obsessed with creating, scaling, and exiting multi-million-dollar brands, this is for you. My name is Santiago Phoenix and I am a business growth consultant, online marketer, and investor. I have helped more than 100 7- and 8-figure founders increase profits, claim their time back, and transform the world. Now it's your turn. Welcome to the show. Hello and welcome to Valuetising. Today our guest is Cynthia Sandoval, a growth strategist and Facebook ads consultant who has managed tens of millions of dollars in profitable ad spend for brands like Diamond John from ABC's Shark Tank, Wix, Atkins, Capital One, Chase, and more. Cynthia is also a teacher to other media buyers who want to grow their careers and host of the DM Happy Hour podcast, where she talks about the digital marketing space and the human side of marketing. Cynthia, welcome to the show.
Welcome, and thank you for having me. I'm surprised you said my name like that. You know, a Latino, you should say Sandoval, right?
How would you say it?
With all the accents. No, I think you said like Sandoval, which is how it's supposed to, but I was hoping with your accent you would say it like the way that it's supposed to be said with your chest, Sandoval.
Sandoval.
There we go. There we go. No, but thanks for having me. And this is really great what you're building here.
Yes, this all started because I read one of your posts on LinkedIn, which if you are not following Cynthia, you should do it right now. And you were talking about how you hate modern day advertising culture. You hate all the hacks, funnel hacking, growth hacking, etc. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that? Because that's really what caught my attention about that your approach is different to other media buyers.
So I want to clear that up by saying there are really good media buyers that don't necessarily prescribe to the hacks, right? There are media buyers that do the work. The work is oftentimes foundational. The work is oftentimes not sexy and not boring and not always ROAS focused. So I do want to say that it's not everyone, but I think it's more of like the younger people coming up within the space. You can call them the SMA bros, right? Which some of them are great too. And don't get me wrong, I think they more or less advertise a lifestyle as opposed to the quality of the work, which is, it kind of just is what it is. But I think a lot of times that more appeals to like quick fixes. And, I don't prescribe to that at all, just because to do good work, to do quality work, especially in the advertising space, it always takes, you are always business consulting. You are always, in the sense, optimizing their entire funnel. In order for you to be extremely successful on the advertising side, you have to have a decent foundation on the business side, right? And so I feel that the good media buyers are always touching on that. They are always basing everything on unit economics. They're understanding the client's unit economics, meaning like the customer's lifetime value. Like, I won't touch an ad account if I don't feel like there's potential to scale or the room isn't there to scale and they just kind of want to hit ads. Like, for example, ad costs. Well, this is not an example. Ad costs year-over-year increase, right?
Yeah.
So I was looking at this brand through a friend, and he was saying like, what do you think? He was just showing me the brands, and we both came to the conclusion that it doesn't make sense to start advertising for a product that doesn't have any lifetime value, like, especially considering the entire landscape. So it's just one single product, but what else can we upsell from there? Like when we talk about retention as well, like I offer also email services, email marketing services, because if I want to squeeze all of the juice out of that dollar, right? So if I'm just selling one product over and over again, where your entire landscape obviously has some kind of upsell, and it was like, actually, I don't want to get too into specifics there, but
Yeah.
overall, you want to have some kind of product line to build out so that you can maximize your advertising spend. You can actually scale. It's not about just throwing more money into the ad account. It's building out an ecosystem. And so a lot of brands aren't necessarily up to that. And I think media buyers, tend to make us all look bad when they don't recommend that, because they're tending to see that advertising is some kind of end all be all. You scale your account. I read some Facebook ads for you and boom, you're ready to go. But a lot of times brands aren't sustainable enough to scale. I love the cat. So, that I think what I'm trying to say at the end of the day is that this should be a more holistic piece. And our skill sets, or at least the good media buyers, are really business consultants at the end of the day. And they're just using advertising as a tool or as leverage that they really specialize in, but they understand the landscape really well. And then they go all in on this one piece.
I love that. Like all actually the good professionals in marketing that I've met all have that approach. Like really, it doesn't matter if you are a copywriter, if you're a graphic designer, if you're a media buyer, but at the end of the day, is caring about like the client results. So, and I'm also surprised that you're talking about lifetime value because it's like one of the most ignored metrics, I think, in marketing overall.
At the end of the day, like
Yeah. Why do
marketing
you
is
focus on that?
relationships.
Yeah.
It's building relationships. And I think that's like maybe too broad to say and like a little too fluffy. But we okay, so if like I mentioned before, if you want to get really profitable with advertising, considering that ad costs increase year over year, like you need to scale something that actually has a foundation. And like if you're not even looking at lifetime value, then there's no like you're not even looking at the business long term, right? Like okay, you're selling a product. This is why drop shippers fail. Okay, you sell a product, but how are you going to satisfy the customer all throughout the customer journey? So marketing fills those holes. And I think that a lot of tactical marketers don't look at that. They have a blind spot. And that blind spot is not really understanding consumer psychology or consumer behavior, right? And then on top of that, like we have the very obvious pieces of marketing, which involves economics, right? Basic math. I don't know if a
Yeah.
lot of people see that as well. Planning,
Yeah.
media planning, like it's not a really good brand is not just investing heavily on advertising. Like they have multiple things going on, right? And so how can you help them piece it all together? They have so many different variables and they're looking at someone to help them piece it all together and look at this picture in a complete way. A lot of brands have a hard time measuring. And I think a lot of agencies in general, their reporting is subpar. And I kind of get it because in a lot of ways you want to prevent scope creep. Like if I'm just looking at the advertising account and you're just paying me to run Facebook ads, then why should I be looking at your email numbers?
Yeah.
Why should I be looking at everything else? But that's really what it takes to do a really good job is to understand the entire business as a whole. I think like the best doctors, I recently changed my doctor and I loved her. I loved her because the minute that I went in, the first thing that she does is she does a complete, like a blood test and looks at like hormone. She does like a complete test of anything, looking at my blood, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
no other doctor has ever really done that for me. They're just like, what's hurting you today? You know?
Interesting. So it's something
And
across all professions, or well, different professions.
yeah, I think that more hours and the reps that you put into this, you realize like I don't want to say red flags, but the areas that need more help as opposed to the ad account itself. Sometimes it is as simple as like, hey, your media buyer really sucks and they're mismanaging your budget. But almost always it's like you could do more in the back end here to increase or to lower your CPA. Let's focus on average order value. Let's build out bundle deals. Like let's focus on product diversity. Like what can you sell? Like, and then how do we gather that information? Like that's a whole can of worms right there. Like customer survey data. How do we incentivize users to actually fill out the survey data? I mean, before I sign on anyone, I make sure that I have that information and say, like, if they don't have that information, okay, we're going to your email list right now, or we're installing a post-purchase survey so that we start accruing that data. So we understand why people are buying, who are they looking at, and ultimately what persuaded them to buy, where did they come from, an ad or et cetera, et cetera. Like that data isn't always valid, or, there's a limit to how valid it could possibly be. But first party data is a little bit more reliable these days, as you know.
Yeah.
Overall, like we need
So
to like look outside of the box to deduce, instead of just looking at the account. What if conversion tracking isn't accurate? You just have to stop being lazy.
and how do you teach this stuff? Because it seems so important, but at the same time so overwhelming with so many moving pieces.
It's so funny. So I'm onboarding a couple of new coaching clients, and I told them stop looking at stop buying courses, because I'm going to give you some courses to look at. Stop buying them. Don't look at anything anymore. I want you to just focus on understanding the basics of consumer psychology and user experience. Like, let's just review this material
Interesting.
for the
Yeah.
next 2-3 weeks. Just go ham on it. Go ham on it. And at the, like at the same time, we'll start reviewing some tactical accounts or looking at some accounts in real time, you and I together. And I'll start helping you connect the dots. And then eventually you'll start connecting the dots on your own. And then we can get into the technicals of it. It's so easy to learn how to launch an ad or to launch a campaign. It's so hard to problem solve given the variables that change on a daily basis, right? And that's what people really have problems with. Is not necessarily like whenever I audit an account, I have a client, right? Well, a prospect, and we've both agreed that the best way in which for this program, uh, scaling on Google Ads to be successful, they need to focus on their back end with their like their call center. They need to fine tune all those operations. Because if I'm sending leads their way and they don't have the infrastructure to manage that, and they're also not,
Yeah.
they don't have any data points for me to base, like, okay, what's your close rate? What's like, what are these benchmark stats in order for us to increase quarter over quarter, year over year? We can't really do anything. And they didn't
And
really put
somebody just starting out might say, like, what does it have to do, like, so far away from pushing a button on the ads manager?
What do you mean?
Yeah, I'm saying, like, it's not conventional thinking, but that's what gets the outsized returns, right?
Yeah, it's usually like another really great analogy is like what I'm doing right now at the gym. I started working with a personal trainer. And like the first month, I'm like, "Ugh, I want to get back into doing squats and deadlifts." And no, he has me doing like split squats and like auxiliary workouts and like things to support the main lifts for like a month and a half. And I'm like, oh my God, I want to do them. But now I noticed, like, I started squatting and deadlifting. I'm so much stronger and I have so much more stability on my ankles and on my knees just by doing like the basic things originally. Right. So I've seen accounts that have done decently with running ads, and maybe you don't have any SEO. Like, I understand in the initial phages, you want to kind of just like prove the product, and you're kind of like trying to prove the product while also maybe breaking even. I've seen that tactic happen a lot. But then you hit a ceiling and you're like, okay, how do I scale past this? And like my ad costs are increasing year over year. I'm literally dealing with the client with this. And it's like, okay, well, 10% of your overall traffic is coming from SEO. That should be bumped up to like 30 minimum percent. So SEO, like, and organic and on Instagram and on TikTok, particularly for this client. I don't always prescribe TikTok for every client, but yeah, like every if a brand, or a brand's going to be successful if they have like that foundation of organic Instagram, organic TikTok. The product has already been proven. There's product market fit. If they're not buying organically, they're not going to buy with ads. Like you already proved it out,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
not
Tell
rocket
us a little bit more
science.
about that because a lot of people, of course, like organic takes a lot of time and work, and they see the ads manager as a hack, basically.
I mean, just look at the landscape, right? Look at the biggest brands, the best brands, the most profitable brands. Maybe not the biggest brands because the biggest brands don't necessarily have the most profitable tactics. They usually don't. I actually advise people to not necessarily look at those creatives because they have just money to throw. So they just throw spaghetti at the wall. Like they have that money to do so. Because I worked with big brands before and like we don't even really measure. It's crazy. I think they're getting better at that. But like the really good brands that there's case studies on for Shopify and Klaviyo that are bootstrapped and they have to be profitable, they're not just relying on ads. Like they have a pretty strong organic presence. And if you're likely going to be competing with them, and if you don't have those components, like what makes you think that you're going to scale? What makes you think you have anything? It's just people oftentimes want to go from crawling straight to running and skip the walking phase. And that's just not how it works. It never has worked. I mean, there are definitely brands that have gotten lucky, like before 2018. I've seen them. They go straight to Google Ads. Those are like service-based ones. And kudos to them. Like they are the lucky few. But that's not something you can bet on. And not me either, because my time is very valuable. So I won't take on clients like that.
Yeah. Well, that's so interesting. So, like, do you think this approach of growth, like I would call it like holistic business growth, has that been with you since the beginning? Or is it something that you have developed with experience?
Definitely with experience. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you. Initially, 8 years ago, I was just running ads and looking at the ads manager. I was working in an agency where we just looked at the ads manager, right? And unfortunately, that kind of work has a ceiling in terms of how effective and impactful it can be for the business. And I think that that is the case now more than ever, year over year. Um, Again, because ad costs increase so much year over year. So we now have to focus on tactics that are outside the ads manager in order to bring down overall CPA, in order to increase profitability. How can we supplement our advertising program is how I like to call it, or how I would refer to it. But back in the day, working with a standard agency, most agencies do this. I was working on behalf of a consulting client with a really big agency, massive in the space. And yeah, the work that they were doing was so siloed. They're just looking at the ad account. They're asking you to fill out a sheet to understand their unit economics instead of actually monitoring it. And, the work that they're doing is so subpar because they are working in the dark. And sometimes you set up those agencies for failure if you're not giving them the right information.
For sure.
And I think a lot of times that more or less dictates and this is a really big mistake that I see a lot of D2C brands make. They have poor internal operations or poor internal infrastructure, team infrastructure. They don't know how to outsource this. They don't know how to build it out themselves. And so they have maybe one digital coordinator kind of doing a little bit of everything, sometimes managing an agency. And, they're overworked, so they're not feeding them the right information. They're not monitoring the right things, or they're not holistically building this together with the agency. I think a really good agency is a partner at the end of the day and can help you scale, like in terms of building systems internally for your team. It's a really good agency. Those cost a lot more money. So if you don't want to pay a lot of money, you can, well, I mean, I'm not cheap either, but work with someone that's a bit more affordable.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that ties into a shift in the agency model that I also saw some of your posts talking about this. Like, where do you see the space going for marketing agencies? How do their role has to change?
I mean, this is a bit of a hot take, and it's just what I'm noticing. I think that the agency space has become so convoluted, and it's a good and a bad thing. It's a good thing because it makes space for more consultants and more holistic practices to make way. Um, but in general, it's tough to say. I have a lot of friends in the agency space, but I've said it before. I think there's a point of diminishing returns with working with an agency that's not helping you build those systems internally. So if an agency has over a certain amount of clients, like I think I would say like over 10, sometimes over 15, they're no longer boutique and they are offloading all their work to someone that they're trained and a bit more subpar, sometimes a junior level. The quality of work is not going to be there anymore. And especially if they increase, the type of clients that they work with and they're making more money from other clients, you're going to be broken. You're going to be falling down on the totem pole. Everyone wants to work with the big clients, with the big agencies, but like if you're spending under 200K per month, like you're never going to see, like they're never really going to pay attention to you. If you work with a small boutique agency or you work with a consultant and then work to build those systems in yourself or whatever the case is, if you do more of like a makeshift for your agency or sorry, for your brand, it's going to be initially like rough, but there's opportunity to scale that and it's going to get better over time. I mean, if you have the money, like work with a really great agency, set up those systems, see how it is, get your account up to a certain point and then take it over in-house, because now you have like a feel of how it works and understand the law of the land. But in general, I think I think people are going to really good D2C brands that are bootstrapped and actually are profitable, they end up firing their agencies. There's a ceiling to it. I don't think that
Yeah.
I would love to be proven wrong. That's all I have to say. I would love to be proven wrong that agencies um, can do amazing work over a year and sustain that by all means. Um,
Yeah.
and that it's profitable for the business by all means. Sometimes the brand also jumps the gun in hiring an agency when the problem isn't necessarily working with a new agency or it's the problem that they have doesn't get solved by that. It's more of like the internal infrastructure, like I mentioned before. So I think we're going to start seeing the rise of growth consultants like myself, growth consultants that can come in. And this is an offer that I'm ironing out myself and anyone else, by all means, like this is for everyone. Um,
What do you do as a growth consultant? Because it's kind of a new term, and as growth marketing is, and I don't know if, yeah, many people do not know what it means to be a growth consultant.
I think consultant and or growth strategist and creative strategist are two terms that have been buzzwords the past 2 years, actually. So what it really means, like with a creative strategist, that can mean a lot of things. A creative strategist is usually someone that's like writing out briefs and like analyzing your creatives and then from there actually building out new creatives for the account and ideally for the overall business. And then a growth consultant is really taking the time to analyze the business as a whole. Specifically, like in my case, I'm looking at performance. So I'm looking at first customer acquisition and then retention. These are the two main things. And what falls under first customer acquisition? It's usually paid social. Um, yeah, it's usually a combination of paid social and maybe some affiliate marketing, but that's usually it's not first touch. Depends. And it also depends on the brand, but I'm looking at paid social. And then for retention, I'm looking at increasing overall conversion rate on the landing page. So CRO, and then also email marketing. And yeah, there's a lot of couple of steps in between, but that's more or less what I'm looking at as a whole and plugging in those holes within the business. So helping them hire the right people, sometimes going into the account and like rolling up my sleeves and rebuilding stuff and doing it myself. Um, it can look like a lot of things. The reason why you would pay a higher price for a growth consultant that's good versus someone like on Upwork is because they're taking the time to specifically diagnose for you. And obviously their years of experience, right? They have a solution. So you're paying them to reduce the margin of error anytime you have a new initiative, right? You're trying to hit CPA under a certain amount. So you hire a growth consultant to lower your CPA, specifically a growth consultant that obviously has experience within paid social to lower your CPA within those first touch acquisition channels, which usually is paid social. So that's usually more or less what it looks like. And then there's just like a lot of different colors in between, lots of shades.
Yeah. So it's different than a marketing consultant. Like it seems to be a lot more because you talk about operations and pricing and so many more things than just marketing, right?
Yeah, but I think those all apply to marketing. I think in order for you to actually begin the process of marketing, like you need that solid foundation. Like for example, in order for you to execute on your marketing initiatives, if your performance team isn't there and you need like I spend time with a brand just like building out like uh um their performance team basically and just showcasing what that would look like. Need to hire a creative strategist. Is that freelance? Is that part-time? Whatever the case is, making recommendations, like putting in all the right pieces in place to get like like a really good and adequate the the name of it is slipping my head, like a chart, like an org chart. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Specifically for that department, right? I've spent time doing that. Again, I'm just trying to solve the problem at the end of the day. So
That's amazing. Yeah. And I do like it a lot, especially because now with AI and ChatGPT, um, a lot of marketers are worried that it's going to take their jobs, but I
it
think
is.
this also forces that next evolution.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Like, but only marketers that suck. Like that's the same thing. Like we've heard this. I've heard this since the beginning of my career, actually, because there's been so much resistance. Because I started off with Google Ads, and there's been so much resistance with AI and machine learning, with Google Ads, and just like using automated bidding and blah 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 blah. And everyone's like super against it. Like, no, we only use manual bidding so that we actually have control over our campaigns because Google's trying to rob us at the end of the day. It's like, no, if you Google makes money the more you make money, right? Like
Yeah.
they're thinking about lifetime value, right? They're thinking about if you're making money now and you continue to make money and you scale, you're going to be a client for longer and then we're going to make more money, right? um and at the end of the day, if a really good strategist will know how to use those pieces to even do higher quality work, so I call myself a media buyer at the core, but really like we're strategists. Like we're we're very creative. We're thinking about problem solving and how can we leverage something like ChatGPT, which I use for creative ideas and creative strategy, and sometimes just to get um, to help out with certain copywriting prompts and things like that. That helps a ton, and it decreases my workload so that I can focus on
Thus,
higher quality work, solving the real problems.
yeah, it does. I heard one video of Alex Hormozi, which I really admire him, and he was talking about like the single greatest asset of an entrepreneur is his focus or her focus.
Mhm.
And I think as growth consultants, that's what we're doing. Like there are so many moving pieces that we need to figure out where's the broken link and let's focus on this. And at the end of the day, it can be something as simple, like you said, like, hey, let's increase SEO traffic from 10% to 30%. But in order to find that one thing, there is so much perspective inside that you require an experience. So yes, definitely the next level.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny, like I was telling my friend who's working on her content, and I'm working on my content as well. In order to build out really good content, you need time to like just look up at the clouds and think. When we think about all the great thinkers in history, the philosophers, the great philosophers, right? They usually came from affluent backgrounds. There's only a couple within the Stoic space, or I think there's just one particularly that I can remember that was a former slave. But in general, they all came from they never had to think about survival, right? Because they were all well off, great scientists. They were all well off, so they have the time and the space and the energy to think about solving bigger problems, and it takes a lot of time to do so. To make higher quality decisions requires you to deload a lot of the information and to have blinders so that, again, you're constantly, it all comes down to the quality of your decision making. Sam Ovens has a really great video on that, and I can share that with you just like privately. It's an amazing video, and it's like an hour and a half long, but it's just like pure value. And like the first step to making a proper decision, he like breaks it down so thoroughly. It's just deloading, literally limiting the information that you're consuming, focusing on just one thing, right? There's so many books that talk about that, like one thing, there's so many different books, but that's really what it is. So imagine your workload decreases. You're not worrying about, I remember having each and every ad group broken out by like the city, right? Instead, just having one broad keyword. Like the hours, maybe like 5 hours a week was cut down, or maybe 10 hours. I'm exaggerating. I don't know, probably maybe even 20, like depending on how big the account is, cut down in half so that you can now focus on just like reporting, thinking about the creatives, like thinking about the ad copy, thinking about, overall the campaign structure, what can enhance, what can be improved. The landing page, how do you increase conversion rate there? If you can increase conversion rate there, your ads, you just generate so much more revenue and your CPA goes down. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's beneficial. I don't, like I've heard a lot of conversations of what that will take us, like, like decades from now, but I don't really care about that. I like less work, so I could focus on higher quality things.
Yes, I mean, for the people who will adapt, it will be a great thing.
Would you like a custom plan to scale your business? If you want to increase profits without adding more complexity to your life, go to myplantoscale.com and get our free scaling guide right now. It will help you get clear on your business and life goals, ensure your business is optimized for growth, and simplify your schedule so you can focus on what truly matters: making more money while enjoying life and changing the world. Now, back to the show.
So, Cynthia, one last question. So correct me if I'm wrong, but you went from employee to freelancer and now to business owner. What did you make that shift? And do you think it's worth it for other people who are maybe in that place where they don't know where to purchase their own business or not? Pursue.
Okay, so let me answer. Okay, so there's two questions in there, two main ones. How did I do that, right? And then, is it worth it for other people? So the first part, I recommend everyone read this book called the EMyth. And the main idea and the thesis of the EMyth is that every business is made up of three main components. You are the technician, the CEO, the visionary, or the manager. So these three things. Oftentimes, to make it work, we all wear those hats. I'm at a point where I'm more of the visionary and the manager. I mean, I do some of the technician work, but it really depends. And so originally when I was starting off freelancing, it was very easy to get burnt out because I was only the technician. I was getting paid to do a specific job. I didn't exactly build a business because, generally speaking, if you're building a business, it's something that's sustainable. It has revenue growth year over year, depending. You're investing into it. You obviously have a legal entity. And then you're kind of making money, like the business is running, even if you're not always there, right? Is it running optimally? That's a different can of worms, right? But it's running even if you're not there. So I was really just the technician. And I had no vision as to where I wanted to grow. And then I had no real systems in order to decrease workload and have standard operating procedures for things in general. Like I have an SOP for onboarding. I have an SOP for developing creative strategy. I have an SOP for almost everything. I'm working now to get it all on paper so that we can hire more people. But in general, that's the difference between just a freelancer and then like someone who's running an actual business. I always hesitate to say that I'm building an agency. And I like the term consultancy because, one, I like the margins, and two, I really love what I do. So I don't necessarily not ever want to do it. I just want to have someone help me pick up the slack and make it better. And so I have 2 other people that are working with me, and then I hire like a couple of freelance designers and things like that. So for me, that's how I started building that out. So now I have some more time to do interviews like this, to create content, and to think of like overall next steps. I think it's important in order to get really good tactically is to spend some time in the trenches and put in those reps. And I did that for over 5 years. Like, I'm probably I always forget if I'm in year 8 or 9. I have to like update my bio. I think it says like 6 or 5 years. But yeah, like you need to spend some time in the trenches to get really good at something technically. And I think a high income skill like media buying and then overall digital marketing is something that compounds nicely over time. So now you have the opportunity, say if you like, maybe you don't want to do that, or I don't know what the case is, but you have the opportunity to freelance on the side because you're so good at it. People are going to beg you to do it because you're so good at your job. If you're really good at making money for people, you'll just always be in demand. You just kind of have to keep up with the skill sets, but that's just more on the technical side, right? So it's a skill set that can compound nicely. The next level for me, I'm thinking about starting and building a brand. I just need just negotiating with partners and stuff like that, and manufacturers. Like now, every skill set that I know, I can apply directly, and I
love it.
Yeah, I mean, like the margins of error are so low for me to fail, just because I know exactly what I'm doing and I know how to pick the right product and I know how to measure product market fit for sales. I know that the first thing I'm going to do building this brand, I'm going straight organic, and how then over time I'll scale it with advertising. I know how to make it profitable. There are areas in which I'm not so great at, which is like the logistics part. That's where I'm looking for a partner. So I think that's kind of the land of or the overall gist of it. You start from technician, and then you kind of have to have the vision as to how you want to build it into a business or a brand, whatever the case is. And I always recommend this book, The EMyth. So check it out. I think that'll lay it out a little bit better than I did. It's a little basic depending on where you're at, but those foundationals and fundamentals are crucial. And again, don't run before you crawl. So just have an understanding there. And then regards to the question, like, is it for everyone? No, it's not. There was last year, I was working at a remote position while managing all my clients and also coaching clients. And like, I was making really good money. Like last year I almost hit $500,000, which was awesome. Right. But I was maxed out. I was working so much. Over 70, 80 hours a week. It was a lot, right? So now I'm taking some time to build things back up and breathe a bit. But what I ended up doing with that main client, I transitioned them over into a consulting client. So they became a client, and now I can include them in my portfolio, and it's really great, and I have really great work that I can brag about. And then I also make some great connections. So I say all of that to say, like, having a job isn't the end of the world. Personally, for me, I'm from the perspective of, in this space, in order to do really good, like you should spend some time working at a job, working at an agency or working on the brand side. I would always recommend an agency. Do you have to work there for a long time? No. Depending on where you're at, like 3 to 6 months, you just want to understand the law of it, or even just like full-time permalance, like freelancing in it. That's usually what I recommend to a lot of people to shortcut. Like, just be a freelancer, like you understand, and they'll bring you in as much as you possibly can. You don't have to necessarily go full salary, but some people love the benefits of having a salary. And that's cool. Like, health insurance for me is very costly. It's like a G out of my pocket, a little less, but it's a lot. Taxes. Although I have a lot of tax incentives, it's annoying to deal with accountant and to hire the right accountant and like to do bookkeeping and payroll. Like it's
a
not
whole
easy.
different game.
Yeah, and I don't like that stuff, and I hire someone to do it, but because like I don't know how to do it well, and I don't like it, like I'm not good at managing them, so I'm probably getting ripped off. Whatever, it just is. But that's just in order to get to a new level, I don't have to. I can make my own schedule, and I don't have to attest to anyone, even though clients. I'm at a position where I can fire clients, but still, like they're kind of are my mini bosses in a way, and even though I have all of that freedom, it comes with a lot of responsibility. I have someone that I have on payroll, so I think about, and they bought a house last year, so it's like new pressures. And I'm
interesting.
used to it. It's not necessarily a bad thing for me. It actually motivates me a lot and gives me a reason to do things until otherwise I'm super lazy. But, some people don't like that pressure and some people buckle. And I get it. And it really isn't for everyone, but it depends on what you want out of life. For me, I'm not necessarily in it for the money. I'm in it for the lifestyle flexibility. I just got married. I want to have kids, and I want to be at a point where I can make my own schedule and make a really decent salary at the same time. And I can only do that because of the compound skill set. And I can, I've been in this for a long time, so I can one and done and make X amount of dollars, right? Because again, it's a skill set that compounds over time, and each and every day you're getting better at it if you're working at it. That's beneficial to me. I can always get a remote job too. I have no problem getting a 125 to 200K, 250K job, probably remote. I can go anywhere. Although I get paid more on my own, but it's nice having all those options.
Stress.
Yeah, it's nice having all of those options. So I don't think there's anything wrong with having a job. I don't think there's anything wrong with being independent. I don't think there's anything wrong with both. But all of it comes at a cost, and so you have to measure accordingly. And the only way to measure accordingly is to understand what do I want out of life? What do I want 5 years from now, 10 years from now? So you have to figure that out for yourself, and then move accordingly, right? It's not rocket science.
Yeah, love that. It all comes down to those foundations.
100%.
Yeah, well, it was so great to have you here. Cynthia, if anyone wants to know more about what you do, the services that you provide, the courses that you teach, where they can find out more.
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. I'm also kicking up my YouTube channel, so you can search me up on YouTube, just Cynthia Sandoval. I think my channel, I can send you a link. I think it's Cynthia Sandoval. youtube.com/channel/Cynthia Sandoval. But yeah, just look me up by my name and you'll find me. Instagram as well, if you just want to look at my cat and me making bread, and then making weird analogies to life and advertising. By all means, follow me there at the Cyn Sandoval. And yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. It was great having you here.
Of course.
If you enjoyed the show, hit the share button and send it over to one fellow marketer or entrepreneur. We work hard to make sure they'll thank you for it. Also, to get featured on the show, go to valuetising.com and apply to become our next guest. Until next time, keep valuetizing.